Welcome to the first EMA Consultancy podcast. I'm pleased to be joined today by EMA's Managing Director Anne Elliott and Director Ian Robertson. Today we're going to spend some time discussing the findings of EMA's latest annual Total Reward Survey. The survey has just been completed and the results are hot off the press. Hello Ian, hello Anne.
Hello Stuart.
So just to kick off, Anne, this is the annual survey looking at employees' terms and conditions compiled from talking to housing associations across the UK. Now, I think it'd be fair to say the results of the survey this year are very different to anything you've seen in previous surveys. What is the main thing that you've learned from the survey?
I think the overriding thing that I've learned from the survey is the extent the pandemic has changed working practices for housing organisations. The dramatic shift away from office or on-site working to 99% of them saying that they're going to do some sort of different type of hybrid working has got to be a significant change from any of the survey we've done previously. This is the 7th year we've completed this survey.
Ian, what's the big lesson that you've learned from the findings of the survey?
From my perspective is that it's been dramatically changed that people are seeing with COVID-19 and the move towards hybrid or blended working. It's been quite dramatic. It's probably followed the processes that private sector and the other employment sectors have seen. But the move towards hybrid working in a relatively short period has been quite dramatic.
So Ian, you've just made some really interesting points there, and both of you have used this term hybrid working. So what does hybrid working mean, and what does it actually mean for housing associations?
I think some people would probably call it blended working, so we have to think hybrid working or blended working. Hybrid working is a combination of remote working, semi-remote working, and office-based. So it's a combination of all those where people have given the authority to either work from home or work between an office and home. Could be 2-3 days a week, or sometimes it could be 5 days a week they're based at home. So it's building that relationship with the manager to trust people to work from home, but also come in the office as and when required.
So Anne, we talked about hybrid working, but is it one size fits all for housing associations, or do they need to come up with their own type of hybrid working?
Well, as we can see from just the survey, many housing organisations are similar. Lots of them are very different, provide different types of services to their clients. So they're going to have to look at how they tailor those services, and then they're going to have to devise their working patterns and how they deliver those services around the client need.
So I've been reading the survey, and it says that 9 out of 10 housing associations will be combining remote working with on-site working. You've both talked about this hybrid model. What other indicators were in the survey towards this shift towards that hybrid model?
What we found is that around about 43% of organisations have already started to implement a hub approach. That's closing their offices or partly closing their offices and having hubs in different locations to allow people to attend office meetings and various other events. That does have other implications into how they structure their terms and conditions. 2 key elements are really developing. The first one is in regard to the total reward package and the terms and conditions that provide to staff. We'd already seen a development within the sector, organisations moving to more bespoke packages where they will give the staff different opportunities to buy into different terms and conditions. For example, giving them a sum of money to allow them to buy additional leave or buy pensions. And again, often the behaviour is determined by the age of the employee as to what they actually want. The second thing that we've actually seen develop is looking at the car policies and how they structure that. If you'd gone back 12 months, 15 months ago, cars and car allowances were heavily used within the sector. But gone are the days when people are attending meetings. They're doing a lot of it via Zoom and MS Teams meetings. So people are looking at the car policies to determine whether they're appropriate going forward. What will that look like in the future will depend on how organisations structure the meetings, how they use office hubs, and what the requirements are for staff to attend meetings.
It seems that a number of housing associations already have the hybrid model in place or are looking at putting it in place. So Anne, how much planning has actually gone into creating these new hybrid models?
Okay, we can see from the survey, Stuart, that roughly a third have actually thought about the strategy and planning to introduce a different type of workplace once the pandemic eventually comes to some sort of conclusion. So the sorts of things that organisations haven't done, and that's 2/3 of organisations, is actually reimagine what the workplace will look like in the future, how they want that workplace to look and feel for their employees, and how can they enable an environment where their employees can best deliver the services to their customers. The other area that employers are going to have to look at is how they engage their managers and staff in this change and how they involve the managers and staff in these changes, because at the end of the day, many of them will have the better answers than just trying to do it themselves. And also it's really important that they get that sign up to how the working practices are going to move on. And then sort of the final point is there's going to be implications for leaders and managers in how they lead their staff in the future, because presumably they'll have some staff who are working in the office who they see on a day-to-day basis. And then there's going to be other staff who are working remotely. And they've got to continue to do all the very good practice things that they've been doing while the pandemic was at its worst, like making sure they keep in touch, changing their style of leadership, and just making sure that everyone is okay, because a lot of staff have complained of loneliness during the pandemic as well. And it's important that they continue to address those sorts of things and deal with as they move forward.
I'd just like to ask both of you, actually, what do you think are the two most important things that associations need to be looking at if they're going down the hybrid model route? Ian, I'll put the question to you first.
Okay, thank you. I think the two key things is, first of all, they need to trust the staff. Gone are the days when you can observe staff doing the job. These people are working remotely, so we need to think about how staff can be trusted. It works both ways. The staff have to trust the managers and the managers have to trust the staff. The second key aspect is to make sure that staff have got the resources to do the job. People have been working in kitchens and in bedrooms. They need to rethink how that's delivered. And they may need to look at how they can set up an office space within the home to allow them to do that. So it may be to give them PCs, it may be to give them desks, or maybe to give them a loan so they can do something in the house to build an appropriate workspace. So those are the two key aspects I see.
And you, Anne, what would you say are the two key things that they should be looking at?
I think the first thing is for the senior management teams and boards to sit down and reimagine what the workplace is going to look like and make sure that they involve staff and, possibly customers in how that new working environment is going to look. The second point leads on really is about continuing to involve and communicate with staff as those changes are made. Because one of the positive and negatives that's come out of the pandemic is this identification around mental health needs of individuals and making sure that organisations continue to identify and address those issues and work with staff jointly.
So, Anne and Ian, it would appear that the pandemic has certainly led to a fundamental shift in the social housing workplace. This is certainly worth a wider discussion. I understand you are holding a webinar with other social housing experts to discuss how the sector creates a post-pandemic workplace. And do you want to just give me a few details?
Yes, Stuart. So we're holding a webinar in conjunction with Anthony Collins Solicitors on the 13th of July between 11 and 12. We'll also have representatives from North Star and Rosebery Housing Associations to give a client perspective. And if you'd like to attend between 11 and 12 on the 13th of July, you'll find the link to join the webinar at the end of this podcast.
Thanks very much, Anne and Ian. We look forward to hearing the discussion at the webinar. As Anne explained, details of how you can attend the webinar are on the accompanying post for this podcast. Thanks for listening and look out for the next EMA Consultancy podcast.